There are several major medical studies of near-death experiences. Frankly, I think some of these wonderful stories, that have been given, heaven is for real, are delightful and wonderful and true. However, my one thought is, because there are people out there or groups out there who use near-death experiences to kind of, propagate a false religion, do not go with the stories in general. Go with the scientific studies. So go with this wonderful study done by Samuel Parnia and his 10 colleagues at the University of Southampton in 2014. 2,060 individuals were studied. Go with the Pim van Lommel study, 11 hospitals in Europe over a 5-year period, hundreds of patients in 2001. Go with the study of Dr. Kenneth Ring of blind people. Hold on, I'll talk about that. Blind people during death. And finally, go with Dr. Janice Holden's, thank you, Dr. Janice Holden's study where she puts together 39 veridical studies together. These are solid studies with the adequate kinds of procedures in them to make sure that any skewing that takes place can be accounted for by statistics and probability. So what do these studies find? These studies find that in 85% of children who experience clinical death, and about 20% of adults that experience clinical death, they find that these people, they leave their bodies. Yes, some kind of transphysical form, soul, leaves their bodies. And they kind of have this sense that they're going through a tunnel. They come out on the other end, and they're looking at their physical bodies from on high above and sort of at an angle. They're looking at their physical bodies down below. Many of them are in an operating room and so forth. And notice that they can see, they can hear, they can remember all of their past memories, recall all of their past memories. They can remember what's going on with them there so they can take it back, when they're resuscitated. Right? So during the time of their clinical death is flat EEG, right? So no electrical activity in the cerebral cortex, fixed and dilated pupils, no gag reflex, essentially very, very little electrical activity in the brain, and a few sputterings of neurons somewhere, in the lower brain, nothing going on, that would give rise to cognitional activity or visual activity or auditory activity in the higher brain. I mean, we're talking pretty much dead-o-dead-array. Now, I mean, the key, I'm using that precise medical terminology. Now, the one thing that's key is when the person is out of their body, they can actually report veridical data that's taking place. And this is what these 4 studies I just pointed out to you, that's what they're looking at. They're trying to test the veracity of this veridical data. Veridical data just simply means unusual data that couldn't have really been predicted. And of course, somebody gives this data as having taken place when they were clinically dead, and an external, independent researcher can actually verify it. So, we're not talking here about, I saw the doctors resuscitating me. Not unusual. You can't use the data. But I did pass through the hospital walls, and on the 3rd floor, I saw outside of the hospital a sneaker out on the ledge that had been out there for a long, long time with a worn left toe, and the shoelace is stuck under its heel. One of Melvin Morse's colleagues goes out, crawls literally out on the ledge, and there it is, exactly as described. Go figure, I don't know. I mean, this is hard to figure. Mr. So-and-so, we lost your dentures. Yes, but I know where they are. You do? Oh, yes. The nurse with the red hair grabbed them out of my mouth before the resuscitation attempt, opened this drawer underneath a machine that looks just like this, threw it in the drawer, slammed it, and if you look for a machine that looks like this and look in the drawer, my dentures are going to be there. And sure enough, they are, right? I mean, we literally have hundreds of these unusual cases, right? I passed through the walls into the waiting room where my brother and his friend were waiting next door, and they were talking badly about me, and he was wearing my T-shirt, "Never speak badly of the dead," because of course, right? They may be listening. So, of course, the key thing, of course, is he reports the entire conversation to the brother whose jaw is dropping. Now, we have hundreds of these veridical, and that's what Janice Holden put together in the study of 39 studies. So it's like a super study of 39 other veridical studies. But I think the second area that really just gets you is 80% of, this is very relevant to me, 80% of blind people see during clinical death. And these are mostly people who are blind from birth. Now, why is that relevant? Because a lot of materialists try to say, oh no, this is just a projection. This is just a hallucination. Your brain is just projecting something, right? Is sort of making up something, right? And projecting it onto reality. Just so happens that the tennis shoe is out there. Not. But anyway, let's suppose we believe this. It doesn't work for blind people. If you've never had a visual image in your life, how in the world is your physical brain going to project a visual image during your clinical death if you don't have a body, a transphysical body that left your physical body and is looking at the whole thing through transphysical eyes? I don't know, and I've never seen anyone be able to explain it. This is a very important datum, and it's not just any percent. It's 80% of blind people. That's a lot of blind people. I mean, what's my point that I'm trying to get to? I think it is highly, highly probable that we do have a transphysical body which will survive bodily death. It just doesn't stay in the operating room. It frequently is transported to another domain which people identify as heaven. When they get to heaven, they see this white light, which is an intensely loving white light, who they identify as either Jesus or identify as God. Little children frequently, 85% of them who undergo clinical death have a near-death experience, and they frequently see Jesus when they are clinically dead. And a lot of people, a high percentage, see deceased relatives, sometimes deceased friends, but most of the time deceased relatives who come and talk to them about the decision either to go back or to come forward. Now, of course, we didn't get any people back here who made the decision to go forward, but they were given an option. So, but exactly. But the go-back people said they were given an option, or at least a discussion point. Now, here's the deal. The deal is there's something here that needs accounting for. If you want to read a really good book by a good neuroscientist, his name is Dr. Mario Beauregard at Arizona State University, fine neuroscientist, read the book Brain Wars. It's right. This is the clash between the materialists and the transcendentalists, the transphysicalists, and that, I think, is a very good book because he just takes all the arguments to the contrary with Dr. Pim van Lommel and others, and a series of other people, and just literally explains every single one of them, or I should say trashes really, those arguments, which are really, really facile arguments. Like I said, nobody can figure out why a blind person can, quote unquote, hallucinate a visual image when they never saw one. Hello. Okay, now, let's go to the second point. But I mean, here's my point. There's some evidence here for kids, and it gets them thinking, and it should be presented to them. They're not just living here in this world. They're not just a clump of atoms. There's a whole lot of good veridical studies, medical studies, peer-reviewed journals of medicine studies, right, that are already verifying the existence of a transphysical soul. It's got to be dealt with.